Do you believe that faith can change the destiny of someone condemned by medicine? This story will touch your heart, because when everything seemed lost, when hope had been crushed by tests, diagnoses, and medical sentences, something extraordinary happened. And no, we're not talking about luck, we are talking about a miracle. How many times have you heard someone say, "There's nothing more to do"? How many times have the reports seemed definitive, immutable, as if the pain had won? This is a reality for thousands of people. Incurable diseases, terminal diagnoses, hearts full of fear, homes plunged into silence, tears that no one sees. But what if I told you that God still writes impossible stories? This is not just another exciting story, it is a real testimony lived on the limit between life and death, between despair and faith. It's proof that even when doctors say it's over, God whispers, "I still have the last word." Have you ever felt helpless in the face of devastating news? Have you ever seen someone you love fall apart with a cruel diagnosis? Have you ever wondered if your prayers were really being heard, or if the sky was silent? This video is for you, because here you will see that faith is not just an abstract belief. Faith is a living force. It's a key that opens doors that logic would never open. And it was exactly this faith that made the impossible become real. Get ready to dive into a journey of pain, surrender, and transformation. A story where medicine came to an end, but God began to act. And the most incredible thing? This can happen to you too. Don't leave this video. The story you're about to hear can renew your faith, rekindle your hope, and prove that even when all seems lost, heaven is still moving for you. Like, comment, share with someone who needs to believe again, because the miracle begins now. And it was precisely at that moment, when human strength was exhausted, that something inexplicable began to happen. But before continuing, pay close attention to what I'm going to tell you now. We are living in times where faith is being tested like never before. The pains are multiplying, the diagnoses are becoming increasingly cruel, and many no longer know where to look for hope. What will you see here? It's not just a testimony, it's a sign that God still speaks, that He still heals, that He still acts, and that, behind the scenes of chaos, He is preparing something bigger. That's why, don't keep this message to yourself. Thousands of people around you are discouraged, sick, lost, and many of them need to hear exactly that the impossible is still possible when you trust in God. If you believe that miracles still happen, if you feel that something is about to happen in this world and that we need to be alert. So this story needs to reach more people. Enjoy this video right now. Subscribe to the channel. This isn't just about engagement. It's about spreading faith. It's about raising an army of people who don't accept pain, who don't accept defeat as their final destination, because time is short. And testimonies like this are beacons for those on the edge of the abyss. Now yes, prepare your heart, because what happened to her will show you that when faith comes into play, human logic needs to come out. Anna was the type of person who radiated life. At 32 years old, she had an easy smile, a serene look, and a routine full of little dreams. Married, mother of a 4-year-old boy, and recently promoted at work, she seemed to be exactly where she always wanted to be. She was grateful for everything she had, and made a point of thanking God every day, even in the details. United family, perfect health, plans for the future. Everything was going well until something changed. It was an ordinary morning like any other. While getting ready for work, Anna felt a strange twinge on the side of her abdomen, something out of the ordinary. At first he thought it was just poor digestion, or perhaps some muscle tension. Nothing that some tea and a rest couldn't solve. But that pain didn't go away. She came back, and it came back with more intensity. Within a few days, she began to lose her appetite, feel weak, and feel tired that didn't fit in with her active lifestyle. Worried, she decided to see a doctor. He ran some simple tests, and initially the results showed nothing alarming. But the pain persisted, insistent, as if he wanted to say something that no one could understand. It was then that the doctor ordered a CT scan, just in case. Anna had no idea that that exam would be the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The days that followed were filled with anxiety. Waiting for a diagnosis can be as exhausting as the disease itself. When he finally received the call from the office, he heard the phrase that no one is prepared to hear. "Anna, we need to talk urgently." In the office, the doctor didn't beat around the bush. The examination had revealed an aggressive tumor in the kidneys, already at an advanced stage. It was evil, and the chance of reversal, according to him, was practically zero. Anna's world collapsed in seconds. The words incurable and short time to live echoed like thunder inside his mind. She didn't know how to react. She looked at her husband, who was trying to hold back crying, and thought about her little son. How do you explain to a child that mommy might not be there soon? How to deal with fear, anger, anguish? It was as if everything she had built was being erased before her eyes. In the days that followed, Anna underwent a series of tests, consultations with specialists, second opinions, third opinions, and everyone said the same thing. It was too late. The tumor had already compromised vital functions, and the treatments would only have a palliative effect. In other words, there was no cure. The scenario was devastating, and the time, it was short. This is where most people fall apart, and Anna almost collapsed. She cried, hiding in the bathroom for several nights. He begged for answers. He felt angry with God. Why with her? Why now? Why so young? The faith that was once so alive now seemed distant, silent. There were too many questions and no answers. What was once a life full of plans became a countdown. Every day felt like a goodbye in disguise. But even in the darkness, Anna was not alone. And maybe you who are watching right now, feeling like you too are at rock bottom, need to hear this. God does not abandon his own, even when the diagnosis is cruel, even when exams show the worst, even when the doctor says there's no other way. Because the impossible is not a limit for God. It's just the beginning of what he can do. Anna started receiving unexpected visitors. People at church she didn't even know began praying for her. Prayer chains formed in other states. Friends of friends began to fast, to cry out for a miracle. A close friend sent a video of a healing testimony, a case very similar to hers. She watched it without expectation, but something about that video touched her soul deeply. For the first time in days, she cried, but not out of despair. He cried, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. That night she knelt by the bed, alone. He didn't ask for healing. He did not require explanations. She just gave herself away. He said sincerely, "Lord, I don't understand why this is, but I trust in you. If it's your will, heal me. But if it's not, give me peace. Help me walk with you until the end." It was a simple prayer but full of faith, and that's when everything started to change. Are you feeling this too? A gentle presence while listening to this story. Maybe this message is reaching you because God wants to rekindle your faith. Maybe you are facing a diagnosis, or maybe your pain is emotional, spiritual, but the message is the same. God is still in control. And you know what? This is exactly why this video needs to reach more people. We don't know how many Annas are on the other side of the screen right now, going through nights of anguish, praying alone in the dark, thinking about giving up. You can be someone's answer channel. That's why leave your like right now. This helps YouTube show this message to more people, and subscribe to the channel if you believe that lives can be transformed by faith. Here, we don't tell beautiful stories just for emotion. Here we share real testimonies which prove God's actions in the smallest details. And if you've experienced something similar, if you've seen God work something impossible in your life, write here in the comments, "I saw God act." Your comment may spark faith in someone who needs hope right now. And if you are waiting for the impossible to happen, also comment, "I believe in miracles," because it's not over yet. In fact, what happened next with Anna will make you see faith with different eyes. And it was exactly after that prayer that everything began to transform in a supernatural way. But before any sign of improvement appeared, Anna would still have to go through the darkest valley of her life. Because sometimes the miracle doesn't come immediately. Sometimes God allows us to go through the storm to show us that He is able to calm even the most violent winds, even when everything seems out of control. In the days following that sincere delivery, Anna still faced the harsh reality of the diagnosis. The tests continued to show the same thing: aggressive cancer, advanced stage, metastasis in the lungs. The doctors were careful with their words, but the looks said it all. She could see on each professional's face the pain of not being able to offer hope. "Unfortunately, we don't have good news," was the most repeated phrase in consultations. And this is where despair takes over. Because it's not just the body that gets sick at these times. It's the soul, it's the spirit. Anna began to feel constant pain, body, weakness, and daily nausea. The food lost its taste. The days were no longer counted in hours, but in exams, consultations, applications, and results. She could no longer leave the house without help. Every step felt too heavy. The face, previously illuminated, gradually dimmed, like a candle about to go out. At home, the climate also changed. The young son felt that something was wrong, even though he didn't fully understand it. He asked, "Is Mommy going to get well soon?" Anna smiled, trying to maintain her strength, but inside, she was torn apart. Her husband, who was her companion in faith, cried hidden in the bathroom every night. His pain was silent, but intense. The truth is that illness doesn't just affect the sick body. It affects the entire house, the entire family, the entire environment. There was one night in particular, a night when Anna was sure she couldn't take it anymore. The physical pain was unbearable, but worse than that was the emotional weight, the fear, the feeling of end. She was lying down, breathing hard, when she looked up at the ceiling and thought, "It's today. I'm going to leave." And at that moment, something happened. A memory invaded her mind from when she was still a child, and her grandmother said, "Daughter, when everything is dark, close your eyes and say, 'Jesus, hold my hand.'" It was a simple memory, a grandmother's phrase, but that night that was all she could say. With tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Jesus, hold my hand." It was at this point that something began to change, not in the body, not in exams, but inside her. An inexplicable heat took over the room. There was no light, no sound, but there was peace, a peace that made no sense to anyone in her state. And for the first time in a long time, Anna slept deeply. And that morning, no medicine was needed, but don't think it was easy. The process was still painful. The disease was still there. The body remained fragile. However, the spirit was rising. Again, she began to wake up wanting to live, even though she didn't know if she would. He began to praise even though he was crying. He began to give thanks for the air, for the morning, for each new day. And it was in this environment, an environment of faith in the midst of chaos, that the atmosphere began to change. Doctors noticed it first. One of them commented with surprise, "Her face has changed. It's like she's better, even without clinical improvement." Another said, "She has something different. She shines." And Anna just smiled, because she knew she had handed control over to the God who does the impossible. It was during this period that she decided to do something that many avoid, recording a video, a short cell phone video. No makeup, no filter, with a choked voice and swollen eyes from crying. She just said, "If you are going through something similar, know that I understand your pain. I am fighting for my life, but faith has been my fuel. I don't know what will happen, but I know who I have believed in." This video went viral among friends, family, and even reached strangers who began to pray for her. Messages began to appear from all over Brazil, people saying they had given up on living, until they heard those words. People who returned to praying, believing, seeking God. Anna's testimony did not yet have a happy ending, but it was already generating life in other hearts. And this teaches us something profound. Sometimes God allows us to be hurt, so that our story can heal others. Sometimes the miracle begins within the soul before reaching the body. Sometimes He wants to use us as a bridge for others to believe again. And maybe you, who are here watching, are at this point too. Maybe you're facing something that seems like a dead end. Maybe the pain is suffocating your faith. Maybe you no longer have the strength to pray. But look, God doesn't need you to be strong. He just needs you to trust. Let me ask you, have you ever had a moment like this? When everything seemed lost, but deep down, a spark of faith began to burn? Comment below. I felt God lift me up. If this has ever happened to you, all right, I'm still waiting for God to act. If you are in this process, trusting even without understanding, your comment could be a seed of hope in someone's life. You can't imagine how many people read the comments before even watching the video. Sometimes one sentence from you is all the other person needs to continue. And speaking of continuing, it was exactly at this point, when Anna began to accept God's will with a peaceful heart, that a new chapter began to be written. Not because of the strength of medicine, not because of statistics, but because of something that science could never explain. Because what happened in the days that followed will challenge everything you believe about limits, diagnoses, and human logic. After that early morning when Anna whispered, "Jesus, hold my hand," something inside her began to change. It was still difficult to put into words what was happening. On the outside, nothing had improved. The pain continued. The tests continued to show the same sentence, terminal cancer. But inside, a new flame was being lit. And it wasn't just any flame of hope, it was faith. Genuine faith. Faith that is born in the valley of the shadow of death. Faith that blooms when everything around seems sterile. Anna, who previously spent her days lying down, looking at the ceiling and crying, in silence, now began looking for answers elsewhere. Instead of questioning the doctors, he began to delve into the scriptures. With the Bible always by the bed, I read passages that talked about healing, promises, renewal. Psalm 121 became his refuge. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. And that was exactly what she was doing now. Every day, without fail, she raised her eyes, even with my eyes swollen from crying, even with a weak body, even when the exams only brought harsh news. Anna decided that if her story was to have an end, then it would be an end of faith, not of fear. And it was in that decision that she did something that would completely change the atmosphere around her. She surrendered, fully. It was a grey morning. Light rain fell outside, while the smell of the hospital mixed with the heavy silence of the room. Anna was alone at that moment. No chaperones, no nurses around, just her and God. And in that silence, she opened her heart, for once without trying to appear strong. No pretty phrases, no expectations, just true. With tears falling one by one, she prayed softly, "God, I don't have the strength anymore. I've tried to be strong. I've tried to trust. I've tried to stand firm. But I'm tired. I'm scared. I'm lost. I don't know what you want to do with all of this. But even though I don't understand, I trust. I trust that you're with me. And if it's your will to heal me, I'll glorify you. But if it's not, teach me to love you anyway." It was a prayer unlike any she had ever prayed. It was not a plea for healing. It was a delivery, complete. It was the spirit surrendering to the Creator. It was the tired soul lying in the arms of the Father. And it was at that moment, with her eyes closed and her heart completely exposed, that Anna felt something she had never felt in her entire life. A presence, a real, living, strong presence. It was as if someone was there in the room with her. She didn't see it with her eyes, but she felt it in her spirit. A warmth, a lightness, a peace that invaded the environment. It wasn't emotion, it wasn't psychological. It was the touch of the Holy Spirit, the invisible embrace of a God who does not abandon us, even in the deepest valley. She didn't say anything, just cried, but it was no longer a cry of despair. It was a cry of surrender. A cry from those who understood that even in pain, there is purpose. Even in chaos, there is direction. Even in illness, there is a God who continues to be God. From that day on, something changed in Anna, and not just inside her, but around her. The doctors noticed, the nurses commented, the woman who was previously dejected now sang praises quietly in the room. The woman who previously avoided talking now shared verses with other patients. One of them, in particular, heard Hannah reading Isaiah 41:10. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your Sat, a God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness." And that verse, read in a soft voice by a woman weak to human eyes, was like a breath of life for whoever was in the next bed. You know, there are times when God doesn't change the circumstance right away, because He is first molding the heart, and Anna's heart was being completely transformed. Her faith no longer depended on an outcome. I was no longer tied to a physical miracle. Her faith was now rooted in a God who was trustworthy regardless of the outcome. And it was this faith, this simple, sincere, surrendered faith, that began to provoke something invisible but powerful. The heavens began to move. The spiritual atmosphere has changed. And even without visible promises, Anna knew she was experiencing something supernatural. She began to pray for others, even sick, even weakened. He began asking God to use his pain to reach lives. And curiously, it was in this moment of total surrender that the first signs began to emerge. The tests that previously only showed regression were now stable. The organs that seemed compromised began to respond better to the medications, and the doctors themselves began to say, "We still don't know how to explain it, but something is changing." Can you feel it? Can you see how true surrender can be the starting point for God's action? Maybe this part of the story is speaking directly to you. Maybe what God is expecting from you is not an elaborate prayer, not an extreme effort, not a desperate cry. Maybe He's just waiting for you to say, "Lord, I surrender." If this makes sense to you, write it here in the comments now. Today, I give myself to God. And let that declaration be your leap of faith. Or if you have already experienced this moment of surrender, witness it here. I handed it over and saw God act. You have no idea how much these words can impact someone who is on the edge, because there are people here, watching this video right now, silently needing a push to trust. And your comment could be exactly that, the answer that the other person asked for in prayer. And speaking of response, it was after that total surrender, in that silent room, that Anna began to experience what no one, not even the doctors, could imagine. Because when heaven meets a surrendered heart, miracles begin to happen in ways that defy all human logic. And that's what started to happen to Anna. Something inexplicable, unlikely, illogical to human eyes, but absolutely natural for anyone who believes in God's supernatural. There were no trumpets, no heavenly lights, no audible voices. What happened was the invisible, silent, and powerful touch of the God who sees the depths, who listens to the prayers whispered with tears, who responds with mercy when the world has already decreed the end. It all started subtly, a routine exam, one of those that only serves to monitor the evolution of the disease, revealed something curious. The metastasis had stopped advancing. The doctor looked at the report, then looked at Anna and said sincerely, "I don't understand. This was not expected. There is no clinical explanation." And she, with the calm look of someone who knows the peace that surpasses all understanding, replied, "Perhaps there is no clinical explanation, but there is a spiritual explanation." In the following weeks, the results continued to come with changes, small but consistent. The rates improved. The body responded. The tumor, which had previously been growing at an alarming rate, now appeared to be stagnant. And then the unexpected happened. A new CT scan, a new query. The doctor entered the room with wide eyes, holding the exam in his hands, and said, "Anna, the tumor is gone." Silence took over the room for a few seconds. Neither she nor her husband could say anything. It was as if time had stopped. "Disappeared," she repeated in disbelief, and the doctor, still not understanding, replied, "Yes, there is no sign of the tumor, no trace, no active focus. Your organs are clean, and I honestly don't know what happened here." But Anna knew. She knew. She didn't just know. She had felt it. He had prayed. I had trusted when nothing made sense. He had surrendered. And now, there before her was proof that God still performs miracles. The impossible had become reality. What medicine had declared as incurable, God had erased with a breath of His grace. The crying that took over the office at that moment was different from all the previous ones. It was a cry of relief, of gratitude, in amazement at the power of God. The husband, who was trying to stand his ground, burst into tears. Anna held the exam with trembling hands, like someone holding a piece of the sky, and the doctor, previously skeptical, looked at everything with a mixture of confusion and reverence. He knew something much bigger had happened there, and it was at that moment that Anna understood. That miracle wasn't just for her. That cure had a purpose that went beyond survival itself. It was a living testimony, a clear message, a message that God still heals, still acts, still responds. It was as if the sky was shouting through her life, "Hey, I am still the God of the impossible." The news spread quickly. Family members, friends, church members, even strangers began looking for Anna to hear what had happened. And she counted, in detail, truly, with tears in my eyes, but always pointing to God. It wasn't the medicine, it wasn't the treatment, it was the Lord. It was the prayer, it was the surrender, it was His power over my body. She returned home with a new sparkle in her eyes. He gradually resumed his routine, still under medical supervision, but now with a completely renewed spirit. He started speaking in churches, recording encouraging videos, visiting people in hospitals. The woman who one day thought she wouldn't see the next Christmas was now an instrument of life for so many others who were in the same valley she crossed. But don't think that everything was easy. There were still fears, memories of pain, scars, physical and emotional. But there was something much stronger, an unshakable faith, a deep certainty that the God who began the good work would complete it. And it was this conviction that made Anna a light in the midst of so many people's darkness. One of the most touching testimonies came from a nurse who took care of Anna during her hospitalization. She wrote a letter saying, "Seeing you get up was like seeing hope walk the halls. I was a non-believer, but today I pray, because if God did it for you, He can do it for me too." And that's what makes the miracle even more powerful, when it multiplies. The miracle in Anna's life wasn't just for Anna, it was for everyone who listened. It was for everyone who saw it. It was for everyone who started to believe because of what happened to her. And perhaps today, this miracle is coming to you. Yes, you are watching this video right now. You are tired, exhausted, facing a difficult diagnosis, a family crisis, a silent depression, a deep valley that no one sees. Maybe you came here by chance, scrolling through YouTube, without knowing why you clicked on this video. But I'll tell you why, because God is still working miracles, and you need to believe that. And if you have ever seen God act in a supernatural way, comment here now. I am living proof that God works miracles. And if you are, believing in a miracle that has not yet arrived. Also write, "The impossible will happen in my life." These words, declared in faith, have power, not just to strengthen your spirit, but to reach someone who, right now, is on the verge of giving up. Your comments become echoes of what heaven is releasing upon earth. You can be part of something much bigger than you imagine. What happened after that with Anna will show you that the miracle was just the beginning. Because when God transforms a life, He transforms everything around it: people, environments, stories. In the days that followed the cure, Anna began to see everything with different eyes. It was as if the colors of life had returned with more intensity. The sun seemed warmer, the sky bluer, and even the simplest moments, like preparing breakfast or hearing your son laugh, became sacred. Every heartbeat was a reminder that she was alive. Every breath, a whisper of God saying, "I've given you one more day. Live with purpose." But it wasn't just that. There was something deeper being built inside her, a type of understanding that only those who have passed through the valley of death can have. Faith is not about avoiding pain. It is about remaining even when it arrives. And when Anna understood this, she didn't want to keep this truth to herself. She began to give her testimony publicly, in churches, meetings, small groups. People who had never spoken to her started looking for her. They wanted to hear, they wanted to understand, they wanted to touch this living faith that had overcome the impossible. And that was exactly what she conveyed: living faith. Faith that walks, faith that prays, faith that raises the fallen. In one of these meetings, a woman named Beatrice approached. She cried silently as Anna spoke. In the end, she waited for everyone to leave and with red eyes whispered, "I also received a terminal diagnosis this week. I was thinking about giving up, but now I want to fight. Because if God did it for you, He can do it for me too." Anna held her hands and said, "Yes, He can, and He will support you, even if the doctors say otherwise. Even if you don't see a way out, He continues to be God." This type of impact started to happen frequently, and Anna began to understand His miracle was not an end, it was a beginning, a calling, a mission. God was using His story to touch wounded hearts, dormant faith, people who needed one last thread of hope to not give up. And maybe you who are listening to me right now are right there at the edge, between continuing and giving up, between trusting and keeping silent, between following and abandoning everything. But if you are here, watching this video, listening to this story, that is already a sign, a reminder. You still have time, there is still a way, there is still hope. God still works miracles, still answers prayers. It still turns the impossible into reality. But more than that, He transforms the heart. It changes the way you see life. He renews dreams. He brings back what seemed lost. Anna is proof of this, and you can be too. You don't have to be strong all the time. God doesn't expect that from you. He just wants you to trust. May you open your heart. May you say sincerely, "I believe even without seeing." Because true faith is not born when everything goes right. It is born when everything seems wrong. And yet you choose to believe it. That's what Anna did. And look where she got to. Today, she lives. Live intensely. Live with purpose. Live to inspire. He lives to tell others that there is life after pain, light after darkness, peace after war. Because God's action is not just about healing the body, it's about healing the soul. It's about giving new meaning to what seemed lost. And that's something you can live with too. Yes, yourself, with this tear on your face now, with this tightness in your chest, with this silence that has hurt more than any words, you can hand everything over to Him. You can see the impossible become real in your story. And look, if you felt something while watching this story, if your heart is different now, lighter, more sensitive, maybe that's God speaking to you. Maybe it's Him calling you back, giving that gentle touch and saying, "Son, daughter, I'm still here. Do not ignore this call." And if you feel that this message spoke directly to you, comment here now, "That word was for me." Or write in the comments, I choose to believe, even if I don't. Understand, these words have power. They are not just sentences typed on a screen. They are spiritual seeds, declarations of faith, targets that heaven recognizes. And believe me, there are people reading the comments right now, looking for an answer, one direction, a confirmation. And it could be exactly your comment that God will use to touch another life. Yes, you can be part of this. You can be part of a movement of faith, transformation, and hope. Because Anna's story doesn't end with the miracle, she continues. And if you thought you'd seen it all, get ready. Because what God did next wasn't just great, it was prophetic. And it touched people that no one imagined, including someone who, the entire time, watched everything from afar, in silence. But before I tell you who this person was and what God did in their life, I need to open my heart to you. Because what you're watching here isn't just an emotional story. This is a move. It's a calling, a jolt from the sky saying, hey, wake up. I'm still healing. I'm still transforming. I'm still writing new stories, even when the whole world says it's the end. Anna's story is more than a testimony. It's a living message that faith still moves mountains, about what God still cares about every detail of your life, about what the impossible still happens when the heart surrenders. And I know it's no coincidence that you've watched this far. Not a single comma was wasted. No scene reached you without purpose. God is using this video, this voice, these words to reach you. And maybe you can't even explain it, but something inside you is shaking right now. And that's the Holy Spirit saying, it's me, I'm here, I'm talking to you. Therefore, I want to make a request to you. But it's not just a technical request from those who want the channel to grow. It's something much deeper, much more spiritual. It is a request with the weight of eternity. If this message touched you, if this story lit something in your spirit, if faith was awakened inside, don't keep it to yourself. There are people right now fighting in silence, people you know, who are smiling on the outside but screaming on the inside, who are going to work like everything is fine but coming home and crying into their pillow, people who are carrying diagnoses, pain, losses, crises, and no one knows. And one word can change everything. A video can be the instrument that God will use to turn the key in someone's heart. Anna's testimony could be, what will prevent a suicide, restore a dormant faith, renew an alliance with God, rekindle hope. That's why, enjoy this video now. Yes, that's right. Click the like button. You're not just helping the channel. You are helping the algorithm to take this message to more people. You're saying, this story needs to be heard. And more than that, subscribe to the channel. Here, you will find much more than videos. You will find faith, life, real testimonies, words that uplift, stories that remind you that you are not alone, that God is present, that He continues to act behind the scenes of pain. If you want to be part of a community that believes in the supernatural, that shares faith, that plants spiritual seeds in the lives of thousands, then sign up right now. Activate the bell. That way, whenever a new video goes live, you'll be notified. And it might be exactly the response you were asking for that day. And you know what? You too can be a channel of blessing. Share this video with someone. Send it to that person you know needs it. It could be a friend, a relative, a church member, or even someone you haven't spoken to in a while, but feel in your heart that you need to hear it. God can use you as an answer to someone's prayer. Don't underestimate what your attitude can do. Anna's story came to you because someone shared it. Now, the next life touched could be in your hands. You don't need to preach from a pulpit, or know verses by heart, or speak beautifully. You just need to say, watch this, I remembered you. And the rest, the Holy Spirit does it. Oh, and there's one more thing, a very important thing. Right here in the comments now. I am a miracle in the making. Yes, that's the phrase. Write with faith, even if it's still in the middle of the process, even if you are still waiting for healing, transformation, renewal, salvation. Write this as a prophecy about your own life. And if this story reminded you of someone, comment their name here. No need to. Explain. God already knows, and we will pray together for her. Here in the comments, we form a network of faith, a field of prayer, and heaven responds when the people cry out together. It's been incredible to see how people who have never seen each other are becoming stronger here in the comments. People praying for each other, sending verses, releasing words of life. This is church, this is kingdom, this is a move of God. And you know, it all started with a young girl who decided to trust. Even when the report said no, even when the pain said it ends soon, even when the whole world said it was the end. But God did not end there, because his purpose always goes beyond the miracle. And in the next chapter of this story, you will discover that God's action did not stop at healing the body. He was preparing something even bigger, something that would touch a life that no one expected. A person who was observing everything from afar, and who, until then, didn't believe in anything anymore. Now tell me, can you imagine who this person was? Comment below. I want to see what God will do now, because what comes next, it will shake everything you believe about salvation, purpose, and God's immeasurable love. And the most impressive thing is that all of this was just the beginning, because what God was about to do in the life of a person who seemed distant from it all, someone who followed every detail in silence without showing any reaction, surpasses anything Anna had ever experienced up to that moment. The miracle that reached her body was now about to reach hearts that had been hardened, closed, disbelieved for years. And it is in this next chapter that something completely unexpected happens. A reunion, a restoration, a profound calling that could only have come from heaven. You will see how a single transformed life can touch generations, change destinies, and rekindle faith in those who had already erased all hope. This next testimony will reveal what happens when God decides to use a story to break down resistance and rebuild homes. And whoever looks carefully will see their own reflection in this new part of the journey. Because when God begins, he goes to the end. And the next scene in this story has everything to be the one that speaks directly to you.